In the previous module, we learned about the list type. We learned how to create empty lists as well as lists with one or more items. We know that a list is a collection of items enclosed in square brackets, with each item separated by a comma. For example, here we have the empty list, and we can create a list that contains multiple items, with each separated by a comma. So here we have 3 items in the list, and we have the numbers 1, 2, and 3. Now, as you progress in your coding journey, you'll encounter scenarios where you need to add items to an existing list. In such situations, we can use a built-in Python function called Append. It's a built-in function tailored specifically for lists and serves the purpose of adding an item to the end of a list. So let's go ahead and see an example of this. First, let me add a comment here, and I'll say this is an empty list. And here we have a list with 3 items. So next, let's go ahead and create a variable, and we'll call it list of fruits. And I'll assign this equal to an empty list. Now, using the append function, let's go ahead and add an item to the end of the list. So the way to use the append function is first we'll go ahead and specify the list. In this case, the list is list of fruits. Then I'll go ahead and do a dot. Then I'll place the name of the function. In this case, it's append. And then we can place any item that we'd like inside the parentheses. And this will go ahead and add the item to the end of the list of fruits. So let's go ahead and add a string, and we'll say orange. Then we can go ahead and print out list of fruits. Let's go ahead and run this. And as you can see, we have a list that contains one item, orange. So initially here, we had an empty list. And let's actually go ahead and print out list of fruits so we can see that it is empty. So I'll go ahead and run this. And as you can see, list of fruits is empty initially. Then using the append function, we add the string orange. Afterwards, we print out list of fruits again. And that's why here we see a list that contains one item, which is orange. Now, it's important to note that the append function does not return any data. So we don't want to try to store what this returns into a variable. Next, let's go ahead and add another item to the end of list of fruits. So as before, we'll go ahead and write list of fruits. We'll specify the name of the function, which is append. And then inside the parentheses, we'll specify the string that we want appended to the end of the list. And we'll go ahead and add the string apple. So we should expect apple to be added after orange because append adds an item to the end of a list. So let's go ahead and print out the list again. And let's go ahead and run this. And as you can see, we see that apple was added to the end of the list. So let's go ahead and see one more example. So we'll go ahead and add another item to the end of the list. So I'll start off with the variable, list of fruits. I'll add the append function, and then enclosed in the parentheses, I'll add another fruit. In this case, we'll do watermelon. And I'm expecting watermelon to be added to the end of the list. Now let's go ahead and print out the list. So let's go ahead and run this. And as you can see, watermelon was added to the end of the list. So you can see the progression. First, we have an empty list. Then we appended orange, and so we only see orange in the list. Then we appended apple, and then we see orange and apple in the list. Lastly, we appended watermelon, and now we see orange, apple, and watermelon. As mentioned before, the append function does not return anything. And any function in Python that does not return anything basically returns the none type. So let's go ahead and actually see this in action. So let's go ahead and create another statement where we add another item to the end of the list. In this case, we'll add the string berries. Now we know that append does not return anything, and that any function that does not return anything in Python returns the none type. So let's go ahead and capture what this returns, and we'll set this equal to the variable result. Next, let's go ahead and print out the variable result. So let's go ahead and run this. So you can see we get none. Because as I mentioned, any function that does not return any data by default will return the none type. And that's exactly why we see none here. And that's why I stated that there's no reason to try and capture what the append function returns, because you can't do anything with nothing. So let's go ahead and comment this out, and I'll leave a comment here that says we shouldn't try to capture the result of calling the append function because it doesn't return anything. In other words, it returns the none type. And there isn't anything that we can do with nothing. Now, I do want to point out that this is valid Python code, and this will work. So let's go ahead and print out list of fruits. And we should expect to see berries added to the end of the list. So let's go ahead and run this. And as you can see, berries was added to the end of the list. Now, although this works, capturing what the append function returns is just unnecessary. And we don't need to do that. Instead, we could just do this. And this will also work. So let's go ahead and run this. And we also see berries added to the end of the list. And this is better practice. And that essentially wraps up the append function in Python.